I was sitting across from my husband at a candlelit dinner when I saw her, his pregnant mistress, sitting right beside him while I was the one paying for their meal. He thought I'd break down. Instead, I calmly handed him divorce papers and slid over a bank statement with the words, balance. $0. He had been using me to fund his double life, and I decided it was time to end it all. Have you ever been so betrayed that it felt like the air was knocked right out of your lungs? Maybe it was a partner, a family member, or even a close friend. I know that feeling all too well. And let me tell you, I didn't just get even. I took everything he thought he'd built without me. Stick around, because the ending, he never saw it coming. I'm in my mid-30s now, emotionally grounded and well-versed in managing my career, my finances, and my own life. At the time, though, I couldn't have predicted how wrong everything would go, and how far I'd go to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Let me take you back to the beginning. Desmond and I were what you'd call the perfect match. We were a power couple in every sense of the word. I was driven, ambitious, financially savvy, managing investments, making strategic decisions, and building a solid foundation. Desmond, on the other hand, had this charm about him, the kind that made everyone love him, from colleagues to strangers. He had big dreams, a magnetic personality, but underneath it all, he lacked the discipline and maturity to make those dreams a reality. We complemented each other. At least, I thought we did. Early on, things felt like they were falling into place. We bought a beautiful home in a desirable neighborhood. Friends admired our lifestyle. We hosted dinner parties, traveled to exotic places, and our relationship looked perfect on paper. But if I'm honest, I noticed small things that didn't add up. Desmond would get a little too secretive with his phone, checking it often, stepping away to answer messages in private. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There were times, too, when we'd sit together in silence, our conversations growing fewer and farther apart. He'd come home late from work, distant, too tired to talk or engage. And yet, I chose to ignore it. I told myself it's nothing. I was too focused on keeping up appearances, on making sure we both looked successful, happy, and secure in the eyes of others. The more I convinced myself everything was fine, the more I pushed aside the creeping sense that I was the only one invested in our future. We had been married for 7 years, and still no children. It wasn't for lack of trying, though. We'd been struggling with fertility issues, and while Desmond wasn't one to talk about it, I felt the weight of it every day. I thought, once we get through this, things will get better. We'll be happy again. But the cracks in the foundation were starting to show, and I was too blinded by love, hope, and the pressure to keep up appearances to see them. It started slowly. Little things that didn't seem like much at first but added up over time. Desmond's late nights became more frequent, and when he did come home, there was this new habit, cologne. It wasn't like him to wear it before, but now he'd smell faintly of something fresh and crisp, something different. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a new phase, something he was experimenting with. But then came the withdrawals. I remember one evening he'd left his wallet on the counter. I didn't mean to pry, but as I passed by, I noticed a receipt for an ATM withdrawal. A large one, too large for just a night out. I let it go, thinking maybe it was for a business expense or something innocuous. But the withdrawals kept happening. Small, inconsistent amounts, each one just enough to keep me questioning. I knew we had shared finances, and I was the one who handled the bills, but there were these strange, unexplained gaps. It wasn't just the money. It was the secrecy. Desmond had always been a little disorganized, but this was different. That's when I decided to take action. I installed a personal finance tracker on our shared accounts. Something subtle, so I wouldn't raise suspicion. What I found? It shook me. He was moving money out of our joint account into a separate, untraceable one. Often in large sums. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what was worse. The fact that he was hiding it. Or that I hadn't noticed sooner. but still, I needed something more concrete. A gut feeling wasn't enough, not when I had nothing solid to show for it. A few days later, my friend Emily, who worked nearby, texted me. She'd seen Desmond having lunch with a young woman. Not just any lunch, though. They were seated close, leaning into each other, whispering and laughing as if they were more than just two people sharing a meal. I didn't want to say anything, but I thought you should know, she said, her message ringing in my mind long after I read it. Suddenly, everything clicked. The cologne, the secretive ATM withdrawals, the mysterious money. My gut was telling me what my brain hadn't been able to accept. Desmond wasn't just spending money. He was hiding something bigger. Someone else. I wasn't going to let my suspicions run wild anymore. It was time to confront the truth. But before I did, I needed proof. Undeniable proof. I wasn't going to let him weasel out of this one. When the pieces finally fell into place, the truth hit harder than I could have ever imagined. I knew I needed proof, the kind of proof that couldn't be denied. So, I did something I never thought I would. I hired a private investigator. I was terrified of what I might find, but a part of me knew this was the only way to make sure I wasn't just imagining things. I couldn't confront him without solid evidence. The PI worked quickly. Within days, I had the results, and they were more damning than I could have ever prepared myself for. There were photos. Desmond laughing with a woman I'd never seen before. She was young, maybe 10 years younger than me. She had this soft glow about her, but it was the swelling curve of her stomach that made my blood run cold. Rochelle. Her name was Rochelle. The woman he'd been hiding for who knows how long. The worst part? The PI confirmed that Desmond had rented her an apartment. And guess how he was paying for it? With our money. Money from the joint account we'd both worked so hard to build. I felt crushed. The weight of the betrayal wasn't just in the affair itself. It was the realization that I had funded his double life. All the trips, the gifts, the luxury dinners, the bills I paid. None of it went toward building the life we were supposed to have together. It had gone to another woman, another life. I collapsed. My body shook with a pain I hadn't known was possible. My chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough air in the room. I cried for what seemed like hours, as though I could wash away the betrayal with my tears. But eventually, the tears stopped. And when they did, something shifted inside me. I was no longer a victim. No, I was furious. I was angry at him, angry at myself for being so blind, and most of all, I was angry at the life I'd helped build for someone who never even considered me in the picture. As much as I wanted to break down and wallow in my pain, I realized something. I had a choice. I wasn't going to let Desmond get away with this, not without paying the price. He thought I'd be broken. He thought I'd beg him to come back, cry myself to sleep, or accept his apologies. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to fight. The first step in any battle is knowing your enemy. And I wasn't going to rush into this blind. I took a deep breath, wiped away the last remnants of my tears, and set to work. It was time to think strategically. I called a lawyer, one who didn't know me personally, someone impartial, who could advise me on how to handle this mess without letting Desmond see the cracks in my armor. The lawyer didn't mince words. Divorce is one thing, she said, but you need to protect yourself financially. The assets, the joint accounts, the investments, they could all be at risk if you don't move quickly. That's when I called in a financial advisor, someone who specialized in situations like mine. We devised a plan. A quiet, methodical separation of my finances. I moved key investments into accounts that Desmond couldn't access. He'd been using my trust as a weapon, but I wasn't going to let him destroy me financially. I stopped depositing into our joint account. I'd been doing everything for him, for us. And now, the only thing I was doing was building my own future. But I wasn't done yet. I knew I had to collect every shred of evidence, everything that could prove my case. The PI photos, the financial transfers, the ATM withdrawals, the receipts, the texts I'd found on his phone that confirmed what I already knew. Desmond was living a double life. I saved everything, every message, every picture, every record of the money he'd been moving around. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about making sure he couldn't deny what he'd done. I needed to build a case. A damning one. But there was something else I had to consider. Timing. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I wouldn't confront him until I was fully prepared, until I had everything in place. The key to revenge isn't just anger or emotion. It's patience. So, I waited. I watched him think he was getting away with it, watched him carry on with his life, completely unaware that I had already taken control of mine, and when the moment was right, when I had everything I needed, I'd strike. I couldn't believe it when I received the invitation. A fancy dinner, he called it. Desmond, the man who'd destroyed everything we built, wanted to reconcile. He said we needed to talk. I was taken aback, not by the invitation itself, but by how easily he thought I'd just forgive him. After all, in his eyes, I was the wife who should cry, beg him to come back, and let him explain away his betrayal. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I made a decision. I'd show up. I'd be calm, collected, and more composed than he could ever imagine. The night of the dinner, I put on my best dress, one that I knew would make me feel powerful. The deep crimson colour mirrored the fiery anger that burned inside me, but my expression, calm, unbothered. When I walked into the restaurant, I saw Desmond first, sitting at a corner table, a glass of wine in his hand, looking almost too pleased with himself. His smile faltered for a split second when he saw me. I could tell he was expecting the tears, the breakdown, the desperate woman he could manipulate once again. But when I walked in, I was a vision of elegance. And in that moment, I could see the panic in his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said, but it wasn't the compliment he used to give me. It was a hollow attempt at being civil, as if he hadn't just destroyed the last 7 years of our lives. I sat across from him, maintaining eye contact, not giving him a single hint of weakness. Then she walked in. Rochelle. She waddled in like she owned the place, her heavily pregnant belly unmistakable as she made her way to the seat beside Desmond. She looked at me with a faint smile, like we were two strangers meeting for the first time. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I didn't let it show. Desmond grinned like he'd won, like this was his victory. "I think it's time we start fresh," he said, his voice full of fake sincerity. "Rochelle and I, we're starting a family together, and I think it's best if we begin a mature separation." My mind raced. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or scream. Here he was, trying to present the worst betrayal as a calculated, mature decision. As if he was the one wronged. "I think we should go our separate ways," he continued, his words soft but firm. "No hard feelings, okay? I just think you need to accept it." He was playing this like it was some casual breakup, but I wasn't his ex-girlfriend. I was his wife. And this was no casual breakup. What did he expect me to do? Cry? Plead for him to stay? Beg for his forgiveness? Maybe storm out of the restaurant in tears, humiliated? He wanted me to break, to be the devastated wife, in his perfect little narrative. But he was wrong. He had no idea who he was dealing with now. Instead, I just smiled, an icy calmness settling over me as I waited for my moment. I saw the look in Desmond's eyes, the faint glimmer of satisfaction as if he had already won. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought he could get away with it. But I wasn't going to let him have the last word. I leaned back in my chair, my smile never wavering. Desmond was still rambling on about moving on with Rochelle, trying to keep the situation light, trying to make me look like the fool. The truth was, I'd already made my move. My hand slid into my bag, the cool leather of the envelope pressing against my fingers. The moment was so surreal, it almost felt like time had slowed down. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. I slowly pulled out the brown envelope and placed it on the table. Desmond's eyes flickered between the envelope and my face, confused at first. Rochelle, on the other hand, didn't even know what she was looking at. I flipped the envelope open and slid out the contents: divorce papers and a single newly printed bank statement. Desmond's gaze went to the statement first, his jaw going slack. The numbers were there. All the transfers, all the withdrawals, the empty balance. His account had been drained 2 weeks ago. The money was gone. Every penny he had taken out of our joint account, all of it legally traceable. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "You two deserve each other." I let the words hang in the air, watching as Desmond's face drained of colour. His eyes darted from the statement to me, then to Rochelle, who was still processing the scene. "And you deserve nothing else," I added coldly, my heart steady as a rock. I stood up, slowly making sure my every movement was deliberate. The restaurant, still humming with quiet conversations around us, felt miles away. It was just me, Desmond, and the sound of my heels echoing across the floor. I didn't need to say anything else. The proof was in the envelope, the truth was on the table, and there was no room left for excuses. Desmond was frozen in shock. Rochelle's expression flickered between confusion and fear, but neither of them could say a word. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't need to. I grabbed my purse, nodded once, and walked out, leaving behind the wine, the restaurant, and the shattered facade of a man who thought he could get away with everything. As I stepped out into the cool night air, a wave of relief washed over me. The storm was over. I had nothing left to prove. Desmond had finally seen what it felt like to lose everything. And this time, there would be no coming back. It didn't take long for Desmond to try and fight back. He was furious. He tried everything he could to turn the tables, to make me look like the villain, to play the victim. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth had already been laid out on the table. And it wasn't going anywhere. Our divorce proceedings dragged on for a while, but it was clear who was going to come out on top. Desmond's attempts to challenge the prenup were laughable at best. It was ironclad. I had earned the majority of our assets, and the house was mine, just like we'd agreed all those years ago. In court, it all fell apart for him. His lawyer tried to spin a narrative, but it was useless. The money, the lies, the betrayal. It was all there in black and white. I walked away with everything I needed. The peace of mind knowing I hadn't just been a passive victim, but a woman who took control of her future. As for Rochelle, she wasn't around much longer. I heard the whispers, the stories about how Desmond's money had run out. The apartment, the lavish gifts, the life she had been given It all dried up. It wasn't long before she walked away too. I moved on in my own way. I sold the house, packed up what I needed and bought a condo in a quiet neighborhood in a different city somewhere. No one knew my name. Somewhere I could just breathe. I focused on healing, on rediscovering myself, on finding the peace that had been stolen from me, piece by piece, over the years. I didn't rush it. I didn't look for anything or anyone to fill the void. I gave myself time. Time to process everything. Time to let go. And the more I did that, the more I realized I wasn't angry anymore. What happened to me wasn't my fault. And in the end, Desmond's betrayal wasn't about me. It was about him. It was his choices, his mess. But I was free. I had built something new from the ashes of what was. I wasn't just a woman who had been wronged. I was a woman who had reclaimed her power. The money, the house, the revenge, they all faded into the background. What mattered now was that I could live for myself, without the weight of betrayal hanging over my head. I was stronger, wiser, and at peace. So, to anyone out there who's been knocked down, betrayed, or made to feel small, you can rebuild. You can find your way back. You are never too far gone. And the greatest revenge is living a life that's true to you, no matter how long it takes to get there. For me, I was done looking back. I had everything I needed, and I was finally free. Have you ever found strength you didn't know you had, only after someone shattered you? It's strange, isn't it? How life can bring you to your knees. And yet, in the broken pieces you find the very power you never knew you possessed. Betrayal doesn't define you. It's what you do after it that shapes who you truly are. If this story spoke to you, if it made you reflect on your own journey, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. Because sometimes, sharing our experiences is how we heal. And if you believe in karma, clever comebacks, or just love seeing people rise above the storm, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this today. Because no matter what you've been through, there's always hope, there's always a way out, and there's always a comeback. I'll see you in the next story.